Hey guys, this is Chris Mincola with the Mincola Group over at West USA Realty, and just wanted to kind of get this video out there because Feds just raised the Fed's fund rate again, which we already knew was coming. They raised it 75 basis points, but I want to talk a little bit about how this all works and what to expect in the coming months, a little bit more in depth. I've covered some of this in other videos, but I want to break it down in this video and talk about what inflation is, what that means for interest rates, what does this Fed's fund rate even do, how does it work with inflation and interest rates, mortgage rates, and specifically mortgage rates, and then what that has to do with the housing economy and the recession and what that means. Okay, so a lot of people have a lot of fears with the cost of everything and the recession coming up, and they're worried about their housing market, maybe buying a home, maybe the home they own. So let's get into it right now. I'm going to share my screen with you, and actually, here we go. Okay, so inflation. Whoops, let me make sure I'm on the right screen here. Okay, and there we go. All right, now we got it. So inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. We've been printing way too much money. We printed a ton during the COVID period. We have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is more printing of money basically, and it's going to produce more inflation. When you go to buy a car, money for that credit on that car is basically money that's poof, comes out of nowhere, and that's an inflationary factor. So when you look at what the Fed is trying to do with inflation, is they're trying to combat inflation by doing what? Raising the cost of what it costs to purchase, to get credit, to go out and get credit. And if you're a lender, you're looking at, okay, earlier this year, we had a 0 rate. Now, we're in the 4s. Okay, the target's around 2 or 3 for the Fed's fund rate, and things are starting to cost a lot more. But when we go to borrow credit, but that's due to what's called demand destruction. The Fed is trying to destroy demand, destroy spending with credit. Okay, they want you to save your money, and they want you to stop going out and getting credit. So if you're going to get credit right now, it's going to be painful. On top of that, we have high inflation. But this raising of the Fed's fund rate, what it costs to borrow money, in turn combats inflation, lowers the inflation, and then in turn that lowers interest rates. Okay, that'll lower the Fed's fund rate, that'll lower mortgage rates and all of that. So although the Fed's fund rate doesn't directly correlate exactly with mortgage rates, it does have an indirect effect on it. Okay, and so they want you to save money, not borrow more money. Borrowing slows, production slows, hiring slows, product development slows, the stock market takes a hit. We've even seen the bond market take a hit. But right now the smart money is probably going to be on, besides real estate, which I'm going to get into and have it make sense, but besides that is maybe short-term, 6-month, 1 year type of investments, type of treasuries or bonds, because the economy's sick. So you can get some 4.5, maybe 5% returns by the end of the year on those short-term type of investments. So they're doing what's called demand destruction, and inflation drives mortgage rates. Inflation goes up, rates go up. To combat it, eventually you get a recession. Everybody's getting crushed. We have this recession, and then what comes out of it? Lower mortgage rates. Okay, and so what does that mean for the economy and the housing economy? Well, inflation drives mortgage rates. We see that throughout the history, and we see that with these lines here. But there's one thing to kind of bring up, and that is this down where you see this little kind of long U-shaped thing here, the QE period, where basically the Fed's fixed rates at 3%, okay, unnaturally, so to speak. If they had just let it go, this would have all taken care of itself much easier, and we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now, and it would be a much gradual type thing rather than zero earlier this year, and now Fed's, raising their rates, and now the lenders have to raise more rates because lenders have to go out and buy goods and services and reinvest. So they need to raise the cost on you to borrow the money to go buy a mortgage, okay, or to go buy that car. So since they fixed it for so long, looking on this chart from around March straight through till January of this year, and then after that rates went haywire to correlate with inflation or to combat inflation, right? So you have the consumer price index, and this chart is obviously not up to date with what happened today, just going through with what happened with the Cleveland Federal Reserve. Let's see, today they moved it up. We talked about that 75 basis points. The Cleveland Fed Reserve produces an inflation nowcast. Many important prices are publicly available. Nowcast is like what's happening now with inflation. So rather than wait for the official inflation report, that takes a week or two to produce once the month's end. The Fed takes a look at it now and see how things are trending. And they say it's actually looking pretty good. Okay, they're actually really kind of honing in on this, which is good. Usually they're looking in the rearview mirror, which we'll talk about. But November CPI report, which is the consumer price index on this chart that I'm showing you, which was at 6.6% year over year when we were looking into September numbers in October, going into October. This question about when will the inflation peak will tell us when rates will go down and when the bleeding stops, okay, and the pain stops here on all the crazy extra money that was printed, which caused the inflation in the first place. So November CPI report, and the CPI report is basically looking at the cost of things. It does not take into consideration things like energy and food, though, because the Fed can't control that. The Fed, and it doesn't look at housing. The Fed can't control if a pipeline bursts, how the weather is, so how the crops are going to be, or if there's an oil embargo. Okay, so they look at what they can control, and they take those numbers and a little compounding and rounding, and you end up with these year over year and month over month numbers. And of course, the interest rates went crazy. I had a little dip in July, as you can see on the chart, which actually gave us a little bit of a frenzy there when rates dropped a little bit. See the correlation, and then they went back up again because those year over year numbers came out for August and September, and the bond market went crazy, and then we had rates go haywire again. But unfortunately, it says here in this Forbes report from today, November's CPI report, unfortunately, estimated inflation data for the month of October is not encouraging. And currently, the Cleveland Fed's nowcast has October CPI inflation running at plus 0.76% month on month. So that's high. All right. If that holds, it says it would be the highest monthly inflation reading since June and represents an annualized inflation rate of almost 10%. If we saw the same increase every month of the year. So the CPI and the PCE inflation are both running at just over 0.5% on the same estimates. Okay. So this report among higher inflation readings that we've seen in the past 12 months. All right. But December, they say, is actually going to maybe looking pretty good. So then it's early days for forecasting November inflation, because remember, this all lags a month, right? So what we're talking about right now was for October. So when the numbers come out for November's inflation, which will be reported in December, here the numbers are a little bit better, but still not encouraging, with the estimate inflation ranging at plus 0.4 to plus 0.6 month on month, depending on the inflation metric you pick. Okay, whether you're, which CPI, or the other ways that they look at the inflation rate. If you're looking at PCE, which actually comes out a little bit later, but that's a little bit better. And if that forecast holds, it says that could suggest inflation is easing, but still well above the Fed's inflation target of 2% annual inflation. So when will we start? So we're going to start seeing easing by the end of the year. Now, remember that report in December that's forecasted to start seeing a turnaround is exactly what we forecasted in previous videos and what we've been talking to our clients about. Again, I'm not an economist, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a stockbroker, any of that stuff. So always talk to those type of people if you have more in-depth questions. But I'm just talking about what's likely, what we know historically has happened, what will happen when this type of activity is taking place. And we have predicted, thanks to Barry Habib stealing his great information from MBS Highway and others, that we'll probably see things start to turn around by the end of the year, or slow down on this these inflationary factors by the end of the year. And we should see on this other chart, shelter peaking in the shelter index, which make up 39% of the core CPI. Says continues higher over the next few months, but must get past January to see real progress. So the forecast that they're giving is going to be that, and that we feel here from everything that we're seeing is, remember, everything's lags a month, but December numbers will start looking better. And then once we get to January, we're going to see basically what would be the peak of inflation. Now, remember, we won't actually have the January numbers reported until February, because everything lags. And the Fed is usually behind on everything. They'll tell you a recession happened at least 6 months ago, whatever, which we'll get into here in a second. So shelter and CPI is way back here on this roller coaster example. January is the actual height, of the inflation. That the real shelter costs are already happening over here on the other end of the roller coaster, but it's all the same roller coaster. It just depends on your vantage point, and if you're looking ahead or if you're looking backwards. And usually the Feds are looking backwards. So Fed hikes lead to recession. So inflation goes up, Fed's rates get raised, and here they waited way too long to do it, but they eventually did it. And that combats inflation, and then you have a recession. And that's the history that we see over and 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 over again. Now, keep in mind that the 2008 recession was due to the housing market, unlike the other recessions, okay? So there's a little bit different type of activity there, and we'll talk about why that happened and how it's different today. So the Fed is a mess, okay? And they're usually way behind the 8 ball. They had said earlier in year, Powell and all them and Yellen and these different people were, inflation's transitory, or it was peaking back then, and all that was not correct. And we said it wasn't correct back then, so we try to get you the best information possible, and we were right. Okay. Now, again, what's likely is what we'll talk about. Again, disclaimer: I don't have a crystal ball. Talk to your attorneys, talk to your accountants, talk to your, your financial advisors, okay, on details of actually doing stuff. But I can only show you what has happened over time and within the context. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of quote unquote experts on YouTube and on mainstream media, and even in the Fed and even in the federal government, Okay, and in the Federal Reserve, right, wrong, good or bad, whether you like the Fed or not, these are how they work. And a lot of them never had a business in their lives, so they're not really understanding how people run businesses and how numbers work sometimes. So the great thing about the internet, though, is it calls people out who could show what's going on. So we have not seen any progress on inflation. Okay. This is from Loretta Mester, from the Cleveland Fed president. I was just quoting from in the Forbes article for today's debacle. And we have not seen any progress on inflation. And so I think we need to bring interest rates up through this year and a little bit into next year. Okay. Monetary policy will need to become more restrictive in order to put inflation on a sustainable downward path. But again, here's what she said in the past. I am unconcerned with inflation running away from us. April 5th, 2021. Okay, wrong. I'm worried about inflation getting out of control. May 5th, 2021. Wrong. The Fed needs inflation expectations and real inflation to rise. May 6, 2021. Wrong. By the end of the year, I expect inflation will be between 3.5 and 4%, with a drop in 2022. And that was in August 27th of 2021, when we had some growing fears about what we were heading into throughout 2021. It with stagflation and inflation and recession fears months and months and months ago. So wrong, and they're a mess. Now, a normal yield curve, interest equals price over time, and your maturity on your loans would look like this. But today we're in an inverted yield curve where basically, that's why things like your 6-month, 1-year bonds are very attractive right now, and will have a high yield with the higher rates, okay, in the short term type of investment like this versus the longer. Okay. And this is a sign that the economy is sick. There's an issue with the economy. And this inversion that we're seeing leads to a recession over and over and over and over and over again. It looks like an, icky G, So historically, that's the context. Okay. 10-year minus 2-year treasury yield spread right there. You can see it over and over again. Those solid lines are those recessions. Okay. So I can't see a recession with a 3% unemployment rate. This is one of the Fed governors. Okay. I can't see a recession with a 3% unemployment rate. Oh, really? Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, as a business owner, what happens when you hire people. Okay. You hire people when the economy is good, right? You hire people. When the economy is bad, everything costs more. People are buying less of your products and services. What do you have to do with your employees? Eventually, if it goes on long enough, you're going to have to lay them off or put them to part-time or whatever. Okay. So the unemployment rate and recession most certainly correlate. This again shows you they've never run a lemonade stand. And again, unemployment rate being low and the recession correlate over and over and over and over and over again. So when we see low unemployment, but then we hit high inflation, high rates, and recession, we see the unemployment rate be an issue. Okay. Unemployment rate and recession. Again, here are the dates. Okay. Recession, all the dates on the left. Right in the middle, you see the unemployment rate, super low, and time to recession. Okay. And how many months it took to get to a recession. And then the average lag is 2 months. In other words, they usually tell us when it's already happened. In other words, it's in the rearview mirror. Oh, by the way, 2 months ago, 5 months ago, we had a recession. Oh, thanks for letting me know. Looks like a soft landing. Thanks there, Mr. Powell. So they're a whole lot of useless. But what you need to know are what are the patterns, what to look for, what always happens with these type of things. Mortgage rates and recessions. Okay. So just to kind of summarize this, okay, again, interest rates go up, rates go up. And I'm sorry, inflation goes up, interest rates go up. Inflation comes down, Okay, after combating it with the higher rates, then the rates go down. Fed's fund rate goes down, mortgage rates go down, all that. Okay. But mortgage rates and recession correlate. So when we have these periods of high inflation and high rates, we go into recession. And to summarize it, when we're in a bad economy, eventually you're going to get a low interest rate. Okay. Lower interest rates will come. Okay. So again, not rocket science. Once you understand kind of the basics on this, inflation rates, up, down, how that works. And then we get into things like, what the actual lenders are doing. So the good news is, right now, yeah, it's very painful to go get a loan right now of any kind, especially a mortgage, but okay, they're discouraging it or making it painful. But if they want to have business, what are they basically looking forward to? The good news is that the market feels that the rates are going to come down in a year. So, if they give you a mortgage today and you go refinance it, in next year, they got to make their money on it somehow. So they're going to charge you a super high rate right now, and super high fees right now. Or they're basically saying, just wait a few months and we'll get you a better rate then, right? Whether or not they want to do it, because they know a lot of people are going to refinance when the rates come down. So housing stays strong through the recession. This comes from Case-Shiller U.S. National Index Price Index. So we see that during recessions, we actually don't have issues. One time we did have an issue with it was because the recession was actually caused by the housing market. And we're going to talk about why that is right now. So you have this thing called household formation. When you have household formation, you did have a thing called home buying. Okay. People get married, they buy a house, or people get married, have kids and buy a house. Okay. The American dream. And it really is. And I'm going to explain away a lot of the naysayers out there, but we have a huge drop in household formations back during the crash. And why was that? Because during Generation X, 33 years earlier, we had abortions being legalized. Has nothing to do with being political at all. It just has to do with the fact that the numbers bow out that way. But we see with the millennials, 66 million opposed to 55 million, we're getting ready for the next wave. So guys, we also had the most completions of homes in history. Now, new inventory for the housing market means brand new homes, okay? Not resale, because people are usually going to sell a house and then buy a house. As far as families go, or people that live in them, right? Got to live somewhere. So going to sell a house, then buy a house, or buy a house, then sell the house, but it cancels it out, right? So therefore, back during the crash, you had this perfect storm of 33 years earlier, Roe versus Wade, you have the abortion coming on the scene, there's less population, and you also had the most homes in human history ever created, okay, about 3.8 million. So then you had this thing of, well, let's get creative here with all this surplus and inventory so we can get that eaten up. Let's do poor lending practices. Let's do things like fog a mirror and buy 3 houses. We got to get rid of this inventory, right? Stated loans, all this crazy stuff that went on back then that's not happening after the crash or today, okay? We don't have a surplus of homes. We have a shortage of homes overall across the board. And I'm going to get into that. And we also have the millennial numbers that I showed you. Okay. We have the numbers going up. All right. We don't see the foreclosures we saw back then. People have more equity than they do now. Phoenix area, we've got a great jobs market, all kinds of tech companies, medical coming in. It's crazy. We have a totally different market than we did back then. Okay. So we don't see the crash coming for those reasons, and that's why the crash happened back then. Okay, so housing demand, okay, and household formations is what drives the market. So we have, you know, this 1.7 million household formations, and we have about 1.3 in total supply. So housing starts completed 1.4 million. About every year we have about 100,000 that are destroyed, homes that are destroyed. So total new supply is 1.3 million. Household formations 1.7 million. So builders, ever since that crash, are very cautious because they learned during that 2006 to 2009 period not to overbuild, and that's what we see in the news, right? Oh, they're slowing down their production. Yeah, because they're not stupid, okay? But at the same time, we have a housing shortage, okay? But they just have that fear of overbuilding while the market has slowed down due to high inflation, high interest rates, the two of them, plus the time of the year, right? Which I'm going to talk about here in a second. It's pretty funny, but we see a kind of a perfect storm. Now, some of the naysayers, let's get them out of the way. You know, this guy is a great salesman, great salesman. He could sell you the shirt off his back. Self-made millionaire. He says, don't buy a home unless you can afford to waste money. Now, this was in August 11th of 2022. But of course, he owns homes and will say these things in front of his homes. I've even seen his homes on other shows. I've seen him selling and buying his homes on other shows. I've seen him sitting in front of Lear jets and all that. And that's great. Now, here's the math he gave you when he gave you this example back in August. And his math is completely horrible, way off. Wouldn't want him as my accountant. But again, a great salesman. So consider the cost of to live. You got to live somewhere, right? Got to live somewhere. Of course, he owns his home, right? But he wants to sell you his whole rental investment thing. Okay, so that's what he does in his books on that. And he's got some great concepts, and 10 times your efforts and all that. It's great stuff. But when it comes to housing, he's trying to keep you down, trying to buy into the whole rental market thing. So 1,500 start to rent with 6% annual rental increase. I'm going to show this more and more detail, but we're going to use his examples. That puts you at 237, really a 5,000% rate of return, or a 500% year return. So buying a house is for suckers, he said back in February 11th of 2016. Should you own a home? He says, unless you have 20 million bucks in the bank in cash, you have no business buying a house. Although, of course, he owns a home. Now, here's the example we'll give from 2016, right when he said this, from Case Shiller, best source possible, and how real estate for wealth creation actually could work in this scenario. So up 72% since January of 2016, by the way. That house, 2016, would have been $300,000, 10% down, using that example, $30,000 investment. In 2022, that house is now worth $516,000. Okay, there's another one. Gary Vaynerchuk, smart guy, another smart guy, another great salesman from the standpoint of what he does with content marketing and all that. But he said, I don't think the American dream should be buying a home. I think it's full of shit. And he swears a lot, and that's supposed to drive the point home. But no matter how much he swears, it really doesn't in this case for this particular idea. It's a bad use of upfront capital and ties you up. It's just not smart. He says, which I could never understand. I'm pissed that I own a home. I would literally rent in perpetuity now and will. I will never buy a new home. Let me tell you the difference between a Lambo and owning a home. You just don't know if you own a home or not. I know you're driving a Lambo. Okay. I do, why do you need a home? He says, to live it, to leave it to your kids, ? They can rent too. Okay. That was Gary Vaynerchuk, February 2019. Okay. So let's take a look at his example here. Case Shiller, up 48% since January of 2019 when he said that. All right. So if you'd have bought a home at $400,000, again, the median price at the time, 2019, 10% down, $40,000 investment. In 2022, that house will be worth $592,000. So if you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, you would have missed out on your 480% return of $192,000. So you listen to Grant Cardone, you would have lost 216, and Gary Vaynerchuk 192. Okay. I'm going to do another video on some other YouTubers and stuff that people throw up there, and they're like, oh, doom and gloom, fear porn, and all that to get clicks. So they get followers and click on the ads and stuff that they're running and promoting. But nobody beats Diane Olick, from CNBC. She's been talking about the housing bubble for like 10 years, and she's been wrong every time. So, and there's been people talking about this since the last crash over and over. Hear it every year, and I just want to pull my hair out when I hear this stuff. But here's Diane Olick, okay, one of the people I guess that people listen to, and a $300,000 home back in 2015, October 2015, the average home price back then. Housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. Okay, and that year was appreciation of 5.1% or $15,000. It puts you at $315,000. 2016, August of 2016, we're in a new housing bubble. Well, that year 5.4 went up 17,000, puts you at 332. November 2017, home ownership doesn't build wealth, she said, study finds. Well, that's funny because that year went up 6.1%, $20,000 increase at 353. Again, we started at 300. September 2018, it's better to rent than to buy in today's market. 4.1% increase that year, $14,000 at 367. Now, this one got queued up for a couple days. There, oh, big news coming, housing bubble. July 2019, the housing market is about to shift in a bad way for buyers. 4.0% at $15,000 that in that time period, and year over year up to that point puts you at 382. December 2019, next year will be hard on the housing market, especially in these big cities. And in that year was 16% increase in equity is $61,000, put you at 443, guys. July 2020, housing boom is over and a new sales fall to pandemic low. 18% increase, puts you at $80,000 or $523,000. And so if you listen to Diane Olick, you were looking at losing $223,000. So who are you going to listen to? Okay. Now, that's up to you. You can listen to whoever you want, do whatever you want. Again, I'm just telling you what's happened, what's likely in the context of the actual data and historical framework. So the peak of the housing crash, the peak 3.81 million homes of inventory. Currently, there's 1.25 million, and we have 1.7 million households, new household formations that I talked about earlier, and those people want to buy homes. Now, again, new inventory are new homes, right? So we can see the correlation. And now this is just a snippet. A lot of these YouTubers and people have taken recently, and they said, oh, rising existing home inventory. Look out. There's going to, just like 2008, it's going to be another crash, right? But look at this. Look at this. You notice anything? That, remember, this was for, right? This was just for 1 year. And this is going back before 2014. You notice anything? That same type of dip, okay? Why? Because real estate is very seasonal, okay? Very local, very seasonal, okay? So what does that mean? That means that most people who are going to sell their house, not everybody, but most people are probably going to want to do it when school's out. Why? So their kids can be in school at the beginning of the school year. Remember that kid that came in the middle of the year at your school? It was kind of weird, right? they like it maybe got picked on. Come in at the beginning of the year, much better case, much better scenario. So this is seasonal, but they take one little snippet and say, oh, it's like 2008, and it's nowhere near 2008 in the numbers itself. And two, it's a cycle of seasonal activity. People are usually going to put, depending if East Coast, West Coast, up north, down south, whatever, school lets out maybe 1 month or starts 1 month earlier or later, August or September typically. So, people are usually going to want to get their house on the market around maybe, as early as March or April, May, possibly June. And then they're pretty much ready to move on, go on their summer vacation maybe, and unpack and be ready for the school year. So that explains that story within the proper context that they're trying to steal for that. Existing home inventory, the real story. Again, so 1.2. Now, when they say that, that means the dirt too, the dirt that hasn't been built yet. So what's actually under contract or off market is 518,000. So the active listings, the actual new home inventory, okay, not resale, because resale means they're going to sell and buy typically, so that cancels that out. So actual inventory is 732,000, and we have 1.7 million. That means we have a housing shortage around the country. Now, again, every little local area may be a little different here and there, but overall, we have a housing shortage. Active existing home listings in the U.S., okay? They normally under contract, 25,000 under contract. Here, we see 41% under contract, okay? The homes are, going under contract across the country in about 3 weeks still, okay? So guys, all this doom and gloom and fear porn just ain't adding up. And then there's the foreclosures, right? Okay. So guys, first of all, I can tell you here in Phoenix, our foreclosures are almost nothing. Okay. But when you look at the percentages, you have to look at them within the context. Like I think our short sales this week were like 8 short sales for the whole greater Phoenix area. Okay. Whole greater Phoenix, millions of houses out there, and we got like 8 short sales. And there was something like, I don't know, 20 pre-foreclosures or something like that, or foreclosures. But here's the context of this. Market Watch, very reputable company. Dramatic increase in foreclosure filings, are up more than 150%. Oh, that's scary. That's some fear porn for you. How about that, Chris? Well, yeah, but we had a moratorium the last year on foreclosures and a whole bunch of different programs that people can still get into in order to kind of hold off on foreclosures. Okay. So guys, when you don't have foreclosures, they're not allowed. What does that mean? Yeah, you're probably going to have a little bit of increase once that's lifted, right? January to January foreclosure activity. Look back at the crash years, way up there, and look now and leading up to now. Zippo compared to back then. Just ain't happening. As much as some people want it to happen and want you to click on that clickbait and that fear porn, it just ain't happening, guys. Now, here's something I want you to think about. We are definitely seeing a squeeze. People are getting killed by the inflation, and the rates are slowing things down. No doubt about it. And that's what's supposed to do. The rates going up is called demand destruction. So you save your money. Don't go out and get that credit, right? That's the whole thing. So we stop inflationary factors. And people are hurting. Eggs cost too much. Gas costs too much. All that stuff costs too much. But let's look at this again. Not like the Fed. Let's be smart about it. And let's think past the hand in front of our face. All right. So 2021, if you got a loan amount of $400,000 house, 3.5% interest rate, your monthly payment is going to be about $1,800. Okay. You could even call it, let's even call it $1,900. Okay. So Fannie and Freddie tell us household income, okay, was $9,000. Okay. Household income on average, $9,000. We have appreciation rate of 15% conservatively, even with a little bit of decrease in some areas. In 2022, okay, with the slowdown in the housing activity, we look at the appreciation is at 460. And remember, appraised value is different than average sales of any given week. Okay, average sales price of any given week. Keep that in mind too. Okay, that's another trick. So if you're going to go out and buy that same house, now it's going to cost you $60,000 more. You got to get a loan for $60,000 more. So was it better to buy last year or this year? All right. And you've got the rate. Okay. The rate has gone up. It's doubled, right around 7%-ish. Okay. 6.5, 7%, right around in there. By the end of the year, we may be around 7.5, right? Okay, but monthly payment, okay, principal and interest, okay, monthly payment, $3,060 now, because price went up and the interest rate went up. All right. Household income, okay, so that's a plus of 12, let's say $1,300. All right. Household income went up $800, but it wasn't enough to keep up with all this, along with your expenses and everything. But ADP, looking at 25 million households, said that people who stayed at their job, due to a lot of the things, inflationary factors, having to keep people on, all the stuff that happened with COVID and everything, stayers, they had an increase of 7.8%. People who stayed on their job, 7.8%. People who switched, they were at 15.7%. So they give us an average of 9% to work with. Okay, so an average of 9%, and all the other household expenses went up, and people are definitely feeling the crunch. There's no doubt about it, and it's horrible. All right, so the total monthly expense increase, all this stuff, 1,505, right? But think about this. What happens when they get into next year? When they get into next year with that other increase of just using not even the average, but the lowest 7.8% increase, what does that do? What does that do? That puts us at 10,575, which is another plus on top of that 800 from before. A 15. That's a total of 1,575, and now we are keeping up with this. Okay, so if you didn't refinance, didn't do anything else, and you're at that 7% fixed rate, you don't do a 2-1 buy down, don't do any of that stuff, no refinancing, just sitting there, okay, your equity, your appreciation's going up, and your income is going up. Okay, so important to point out and keep in mind. Thinking real estate for wealth creation, not like the fear porners have to say, oh, you don't make wealth off real estate. Absolutely wrong. Okay. In this example, you use 4% appreciation, which is very low compared to the national average over the past 60 some odd years. $400,000 purchase price, 10% down equals $40,000 in investment. 4% appreciation equals $16,000 profit. $16,000 profit on a $40,000 investment equals a 40% return. Great. I want to point this out before I go further on this. The net worth tiers, people who made their money and their net worth, top 1%, 10.8 million. Okay, net worth, that's top 1%. Top 2%, 2.5. Top 5%, 1 million. Top 10%, 800,000. Top 50%, net worth of 500,000. On average, 2/3 of the net worth was from home equity. And who in the last 2 years didn't create wealth off home equity in those tiers? Show me who they are. Show me one of those people are renting. Okay, they're not. Okay. So housing forecast. Okay, low single digit appreciation, just to be conservative on the numbers. Well, rents will continue to rise, currently up 13% on new, 18% on renewals. Okay. So buy versus rent opportunities. Let's take a look at this. Okay. And where we're at and where we're headed. Even with the higher rate, a purchase price of 400,000, loan amount 10% down, $360,000 on the mortgage. Okay. 30-year fixed rate loan of 7.5%, figuring high by the end of the year, or once we get right into January, expected to be in the home for 9 years. Okay, because that's the average. Okay, so annual property tax increase of 2%, average monthly repair cost $170. Let's say cost to sell 6% appreciation. 63-year historical appreciation, average of 4.49%. Should I buy or rent? Okay. So just with, okay, at first you're like, oh yeah, but I'm going to save money, on the rent, so, when you're going to buy, you have principal and interest, okay, buy the first year versus rent. All right. You're going to see, wow, it looks like I'm going to pay more for buying versus renting. But if I look over at the 9 years, okay, I gain an amortization of $41,000. P&I, that's principal and interest. The interest goes to the lender, right? And your principal goes to what? You. That's your forced savings, okay? So are you already ahead with an annual increase of 6% on the rental, which is actually more like 8%, but let's say an annual rental increase of 6%? Yes, you are. Okay. Albert Einstein said, the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Okay. And you've got to always keep that in mind, guys, when you're thinking about this stuff. So your appreciation gain, Chris, I may save, $40 a month, $100 a month, even $200 a month. I don't know if I can do that. Okay. So guys, look at how your rent is going up and think about these gains. So amortization, 41,000, appreciation gain, home prices going up. Okay. At that 4.49%, that's $194,000. Then you have tax benefits and the cost to sell. Okay. So tax benefits, about 17,000, cost to sell, another 35,000, real estate commission. Again, this is over the average of a 9-year period, the cash flow difference between buying and renting, right? So the net gain after everything said and done, okay, the net gain by buying a home, $205,000. Now look at this chart. Look at this for a second. If you're going to rent, or if you're only going to be in a place for a year or two, yes, and you're sure about that, go ahead and rent. Okay. And I always say, if you can afford to buy. If you can't afford the payment, you can't afford the payment. I get that, but you got to live somewhere. So maybe there's a way to make it work. Maybe you can get a part-time job. Maybe you can get some help. But here's what I want you to think about. Again, beyond the hand in front of the face, don't be like the Fed, right? Don't look backwards, look forward. First 2 years, yeah, taking a hit the first 2 years with the initial costs. Okay. Why? The biggest one is interest, you got your down payment, all that. But by the third year, are you going to throw $15,000 in the trash or out the window? Look at it. After 5 years, $64,000. After 6 years, $93,000. Most people are staying in their homes a little bit longer now, but after 9 years, $205,000 net gain. Net gain, guys. Smart money's on buying. Okay. That's how you build wealth. So investment property analysis, one of the greatest ways to build wealth anyway. Okay. Investment property analysis. So we can help you through this too, but one of every 6 transactions is an investment property, one out of 6. In this example, $500,000 purchase price, loan amount, a 20% down payment, puts you at 400 grand on the loan amount. And so 30-year fixed at 7%, expected to own the home for 9 years. Okay. And it's the average. Closing costs, average monthly repair cost, all figured in here, annual property tax increase. And again, this is a little bit higher on the repair cost because, investment property. But again, you can get, I know here in Phoenix area, we've got some really great companies for home warranties. Okay, you got to have homeowners insurance if you have a loan. Should have homeowner insurance anyway. But I always carry on my homes warranty. Okay, home warranty. Cost to sell, okay, is figured in there. Okay, and the property tax increases. So forecasted average appreciation of local market 5.1%. That's what we're forecasting over the next 9 years overall. Okay, from the gurus, very heavy even the game. So rental income, monthly rent first year. Okay, first year, again, first year or two, you're always going to take the hit. But year over year rental increase in the local market is 6%. National average is 8%. Vacancy rate 4%. Okay. Cash flow analysis. First year, yeah, you're going to take that hit. You're going to lose about $500 a month. But over 9 years, okay, that cash flow is going to be $36,000. And that's a cumulative cash on cash return of 31.9%, guys. That is huge. Okay. I'm going to explain why in just a second. Profit and equity. Okay. So we have appreciation gain, 283,000, amortization gain, 49,000. You got the total return rental income, 463,000, appreciation, 283, gross revenue, 746, expenses of all the property taxes, insurance, repairs, cash flow, buy and sell, all that. 439, that puts you at 306 or 307 almost. For an investment of $100,000, return on investment 306.9%. Average annual compounded return 16.9%. Guys, if you are a financial advisor and you pull 15%, you are in the Hall of Fame most valuable player of all time. But you're getting 16.9% in the real world example that we gave you. First couple of years, you're gonna have a tough time, but then or you're gonna have to just eat it up, like in any business and any investment, usually. But by the third year, 32 grand. Okay, and then so on. Okay, $100,000 5 years in. Okay. So guys, that's all I got for you. I really, really hope that this made sense. Guys, if you have any questions, I'm going to be making some other videos. We'll do more of an analysis of what we're looking at on mortgage rates here once things settle a little bit. The next day or two on that, I'll do a housing market report for the Phoenix area coming up. I'm also going to be going over some of the other fear porn and naysayers. One of them I just had to crack up today because now he's going off YouTube because he's doing some other tech things that to help you out that you can buy that I just found very, very interesting. That he's always doom and gloom, housing market is going to crash. He's one of those that foreclosures are up 150, and look, the inventory went up, and of course, without the context of, the history of housing or even the last few years or seasonal cycles and where foreclosures really are and have been, especially because of the pandemic and things like that. So guys, 480-788-8569, call, text us anytime for more information. Check me out at mincolagroup.com, mincolahomes.com, or always feel free to, and again, call, text, but email us at home@mincolagroup.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks.